The morning sun had barely cleared the Pacific horizon when the world exploded. One moment, the armored vehicle rolled through the training grounds of Naval Base Coronado, California. 6 Navy SEALs inside running security protocols, checking weapons, going through another day of counterterrorism drills. The next moment, fire and thunder ripped through steel. The IED detonated with surgical precision. Not enough to kill, just enough to disable. The vehicle lurched sideways, tires shredded, suspension collapsed. Metal screamed against concrete. Inside, bodies slammed against restraints. Equipment flew. The world turned sideways and wrong. Then silence. The kind of silence that comes after violence. Ears ringing. Smoke thick. The smell of burning rubber and something chemical. Petty Officer Second Class Tessa Grayson felt the strap cutting into her shoulder where the blast had thrown her against the harness. She blinked twice, clearing her vision. 27 years old, 5'4", 118 pounds. Brown hair pulled back in regulation bun. Green eyes already scanning, already working. She was a Navy corpsman. Her job was simple: keep people alive. Sound off came the voice of Commander Barrett Thorne from the front. 45 years old, 22 years of service, voice steady despite the chaos. Ashford operational. That was Callum Ashford, the team's sniper. 28, they called him Reaper. For good reason. Brennan good to go. Wyatt Brennan, explosives expert, 32. The irony of an EOD specialist caught in a blast was not lost on anyone. Drake check. Landon Drake, 30. Pointman, first through every door. Finch minor cuts functional. Tyler Finch, the other corpsman, 29. He'd transferred in 3 months ago from a ship deployment. Grayson, Tessa said. Her voice came out steady. Training took over when the body wanted to panic. Responsive, minor shoulder contusion. Checking others now. She was already moving. Reaching for her medical kit. Hands steady. They were always steady. But as she turned, her eyes caught something that made her pause. In the rear corner of the vehicle, pressed against what used to be the backbench, was a figure she hadn't seen before. A young woman, maybe 25, 26. Long dark hair obscuring most of her face. Civilian clothes. Jeans. Plain shirt. Both torn now. Dusty from the blast. Blood ran from a gash on her forehead. Her left arm lay at an odd angle. She wasn't moving. Commander, Tessa said, we have an unknown civilian. Female, unconscious. Head trauma and possible fracture. Thorne turned. His face showed what they were all thinking. How did a civilian get into a secured military vehicle, into a locked-down training area? Get her stable, he ordered. Then we move. This wasn't random. Whoever placed that IED knew our route. Tessa nodded. She crawled toward the unconscious woman, medical kit in hand. But something made her pause again. Something she couldn't name yet. An instinct. The kind her father had taught her to trust. The girl's breathing. It was too controlled. Too measured. Not the ragged gasps of someone in shock. Not the shallow respirations of head trauma. It was the breathing of someone waiting. But Tessa pushed the thought aside. She had a job to do. Outside voices shouted. Boots on gravel. The quick response team converging on their position. Within minutes, they were extracted from the wreckage. The girl was placed on a stretcher. Tessa stayed beside her, monitoring vitals, applying pressure to the head wound. They moved to the base medical facility, a low concrete building 300 yards from the explosion site, designed for exactly this kind of scenario. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed, the smell of antiseptic. Clean white walls, 3 examination rooms, 1 surgical suite, basic but functional. Tessa helped transfer the girl to an examination table. Commander Thorne followed them in. So did the others. 5 SEALs crowding a small room, all watching, all wondering the same thing. Who was she? But before anyone could voice the question, Tyler Finch stepped forward. The other corpsman. He looked at Tessa with professional courtesy that barely masked skepticism. I can take it from here, Grayson, he said. You should get your shoulder looked at. Tessa felt the familiar weight of it, the assumption, the doubt. Not malicious, just ingrained. She was used to it by now. I'm fine, she said simply. Thorne's voice cut through. Grayson found her. She maintains care until we have answers. Finch, you handle the team's injuries. Ashford, you've got a laceration above your left eye that needs cleaning. Finch nodded, stepped back. But Tessa saw the look. The same look she'd seen for 2 years since transferring to Coronado. The look that said, you're just a corpsman, not an operator, not one of them. She didn't blame him. It was the truth. She was just a corpsman. That's all she'd ever wanted to be. All she'd promised her mother she would be. Tessa turned back to the patient, started her examination properly, checking pupils first. Both reactive. Equal. That was good. Meant the head injury likely wasn't as severe as it looked. She moved to the laceration. Head wounds bled impressively. Always looked worse than they were. This one ran 3 inches along the hairline. But it was clean. Almost too clean for blast debris. As Tessa cleaned the wound, she became aware of movement behind her. The team wasn't leaving. They stood against the walls, silent, watching. Callum Ashford spoke first. "Commander, with respect, how did a civilian end up in our vehicle? We did a full sweep before departure." "Unknown," Thorne said. His jaw was tight. "Which is why security is being upgraded to Alpha protocols as we speak." Wyatt Brennan crossed his arms. IED placement was perfect. Too perfect. Someone knew our exact route, exact timing. Landon Drake nodded. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. The words hung in the air. Planned. Inside information. Compromise. Tessa kept working, cleaned the wound, started sutures, 11 stitches. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. Years of training. Hundreds of hours of practice on synthetic skin, then real skin, then urgent skin, under pressure. But as she worked, details began accumulating in her mind. Small things, wrong things, the girl's hands. Tessa paused, looking at them properly for the first time. The fingernails were clean. Not just clean, manicured. No dirt under them, no calluses. The hands of someone who didn't do manual labor. In Southern California, that wasn't unusual, but combined with everything else, it registered. Tessa moved to examine the arm. Possible fracture. She needed to palpate the bone, check for displacement. She began cutting away the sleeve to expose the limb, and stopped. There on the upper arm, just below the shoulder, was a scar, roughly 2 inches, puckered, old, maybe 5-6 years healed. Tessa had seen enough gunshot wounds to recognize a signature. Entry wound, small caliber, professionally treated, the kind of scar you got from military medicine or high-end private care. She kept cutting, exposing more of the arm. The fracture appeared to be stable. But there along the forearm were more marks, faint, training scars, the kind you got from defensive combat, from being taught to block, to fight, to survive. Tessa's heart rate increased, just slightly. She stayed professional. Finished her examination of the arm, set the fracture, applied a splint. Then she moved to check for other injuries. Standard protocol. Check everything, assume nothing. She lifted the girl's shirt to examine the ribcage. Check for internal trauma, broken ribs, organ damage. And there it was, another scar, along the left side between the 8th and 9th rib, 4 inches long, too straight to be accidental, too clean to be anything but deliberate. A knife wound, surgically repaired, military precision. Tessa felt Thorne's presence behind her. He'd seen it too. Their eyes met. "Sir," Tessa said quietly, "permission to speak privately." Thorne nodded. They stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind them. "What did you see?" he asked. Tessa chose her words carefully. "Commander, that woman has scars consistent with combat trauma. Gunshot wound to the upper arm, knife wound to the torso, both professionally treated, both old enough to be fully healed." Thorne's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Additionally," Tessa continued, "her hands show no signs of manual labor or typical civilian wear. Her teeth are professionally maintained. Her muscle tone is exceptional. And her breathing pattern, even while unconscious, is too controlled." "What are you saying, petty officer?" "Sir, I'm saying she's not a civilian." The words hung between them. Heavy, dangerous. Thorne was quiet for a long moment. Then, evidence-based assessment. "Based on physical examination, yes, sir. The scars alone suggest military or paramilitary training. The gunshot wound required surgical intervention. That's not something civilians typically have access to in combat zones. The knife wound is defensive. Someone trained her to fight." "Could she be a veteran?" "Possible, but that doesn't explain how she appeared in our vehicle, or why she's here at all." Thorne's jaw worked. He looked back through the small window in the door, at the girl lying motionless on the examination table. "Continue your examination," he said. "Document everything, photos of the scars, measurements. I want a full medical workup. And Grayson, this stays between us until we know more." "Understood, sir." They returned to the examination room. Tessa continued her work. Professional, thorough. She took photos with the medical camera, documented every scar, every mark, every detail that suggested this woman was more than she appeared. The team stayed, watching. They'd seen the scars too. They weren't blind. Ashford spoke again. Doc, what's your assessment? Tessa didn't look up from her work. Stable. Head laceration required sutures. Left radius fracture, non-displaced, splinted. No signs of internal bleeding. Vitals are strong. That's not what I'm asking. Tessa met his eyes. Callum Ashford, the sniper, 28 years old but eyes much older. He'd seen enough to recognize truth when it was in front of him. I'm a corpsman, Tessa said, not an investigator. But you have eyes. Yes. And those eyes see something wrong here. Tessa didn't answer, didn't need to. The truth was visible on the examination table. Wyatt Brennan stepped forward. Commander, with respect, we need to know who she is. If this attack was coordinated, if someone knew our route, then this woman appearing in our vehicle isn't coincidence. Thorne nodded. Security is running her biometrics now. Fingerprints, facial recognition. We'll have answers soon. And until then, Landon Drake asked. Until then, she stays under guard, round-the-clock surveillance. No one enters or leaves this room without authorization. The team nodded, accepted it. This was their world. Threats could wear any face. Trust was earned, not given. Tessa finished her examination, stepped back. The girl lay still, unconscious, or appearing to be. The breathing was still too perfect, too controlled. But Tessa said nothing, not yet. She needed more time, more observation. Grayson, Thorne said, I want you on primary medical for this patient. You found her. You know her condition. You'll be best positioned to notice any changes. Yes, sir. Finch will handle the team's remaining injuries. Everyone else debriefing in 20 minutes. We need to understand how this happened. The team filed out. Tessa remained, alone now with the unconscious woman. She checked the IV she'd placed, checked the monitors. Heart rate steady at 68 beats per minute. Blood pressure normal. Oxygen saturation perfect. Too perfect. Tessa pulled up a chair, sat down. She would be here for hours, days maybe, however long it took. She looked at the woman's face. Peaceful, young, dark hair spread across the white pillow. In different circumstances, she could be anyone. A student, an office worker, someone's daughter. But those scars told a different story. Tessa's mind drifted unbidden to her own scars. The one on her left forearm, faded now, almost invisible. From her father's training, she'd been 14, learning to handle a rifle. The recoil had caught her wrong, bruised deep, left a mark. Her father, Master Sergeant Daniel Grayson, Marine Force Reconnaissance, 26 years of service. He'd retired when Tessa was 10, spent the next 8 years teaching her everything he knew. How to shoot, how to how to think tactically, how to survive. She'd been good, naturally talented. By 16, she could hit targets at 800 meters, could field strip and reassemble an M4 in 40 seconds, could read terrain like a book. Her father had been proud, had dreams of her following in his footsteps. Special operations, making a real difference. Then 2 months before her 18th birthday, he'd suffered a massive heart attack. Dead before the ambulance arrived. Dead before she could say goodbye. Her mother had been devastated, had made Tessa promise. Promise never to join combat units. Promise never to put herself in that kind of danger. Promise to use her skills to heal, not to harm. Tessa had promised, had meant it, still meant it. She joined the Navy as a corpsman. Hospital training, battlefield medicine. She could save lives. Honor her father's memory without breaking her mother's heart. For 9 years, she'd kept that promise. Had never touched a weapon in anger. Had focused entirely on medicine. Had become excellent at it, but the skills remained. Muscle memory didn't forget. Her father's training was embedded deep. A sound brought her back to the present. The door opening. Tyler Finch stepped in. The other corpsman. He looked at Tessa, then at the patient. Commander wants you to get some rest, he said. I can take over for a few hours. I'm fine, Tessa replied. Your shoulder is bruised, not fractured. I can function. Finch hesitated, then nodded. You're dedicated, I'll give you that. It's just the job. And he moved closer, looked at the patient, because it seems like more than that. You saw something that made the commander order alpha protocols. Tessa didn't respond. Look, Finch continued, I'm not trying to step on your toes, but I've been doing this for 7 years. I know when something's wrong, and this whole situation, it's wrong. Then trust the commander to handle it. I do. But Grayson, if this woman is a threat, if she's part of whatever happened today, we need to know. And you're sitting here alone with her. I can handle it. Finch looked like he wanted to say more, but he stopped. Nodded. All right, but I'm right outside if you need backup. He left. The door closed. Silence again. Tessa turned back to the patient, checked the monitors. Everything still perfect, still controlled. She stood, walked around the examination table, looking, really looking. The woman's clothes had been cut away during the examination. Now she wore only a hospital gown. Standard issue. But even that couldn't hide certain things. Her legs, muscled, not gym muscles, functional muscles. The kind you got from running, climbing, moving under load. Her core. Even lying down, even relaxed, there was definition. Abs, obliques, the kind of core strength that took years to develop. Tessa's professional eye cataloged it all. This was not a civilian body. This was an operator's body. Someone who trained constantly, who maintained peak physical condition because their life depended on it. The question was, why was she here? Tessa reached for the woman's hand, checking pulse at the wrist, another basic vital sign. But as she held the hand, she felt something else. Calluses. Faint. On the index finger and thumb. The kind you got from trigger control. Thousands of rounds, years of practice. Tessa's breath caught. Just for a moment. This woman was a shooter. Trained, experienced. And she was in their base. In their vehicle. After an IED attack that showed insider knowledge. Tessa let go of the hand, stepped back. Her mind worked through possibilities. Infiltrator, spy, enemy operative, all possible. But something didn't fit. The way she'd been positioned in the vehicle. Injured, vulnerable. If she was an infiltrator, why make herself a victim? Why risk injury unless the injury was part of the cover? Unless she needed a reason to be here. Inside the medical facility. Inside their perimeter. Tessa's hand moved almost unconsciously to her belt, where she would carry a sidearm if she were armed. But corpsmen didn't carry weapons. That was the rule. That was the promise. Her hand found nothing. Dropped back to her side. She returned to her chair. Sat. Watched. Hours passed. The afternoon light shifted through the small window. Grew longer. Golden. Then began to fade. The woman on the table never moved. Never showed signs of waking. But Tessa noticed small things. The way her eyes moved beneath her eyelids. Not random. Not REM sleep patterns. Something else. The way her fingers would occasionally flex. Just slightly. Testing, feeling. The way her breathing would change imperceptibly when footsteps passed in the hallway. As if she were tracking. Listening. Aware. At 1800 hours, Commander Thorne returned. He looked tired. 30 years of military service had taught him to function without sleep, but it showed in the lines around his eyes. Report, he said quietly. Vitals stable, Tessa replied. No change in consciousness. But sir, I believe she's aware. More aware than she's showing. Thorne nodded. Biometrics came back. No matches in military databases. No matches in law enforcement. No matches anywhere. That's not possible. Everyone leaves a digital footprint. Exactly. Which means her records have been scrubbed. Professionally, that takes resources, expertise, government-level access. The implications settled over them like weight. Sir, who is she? That, Thorne said, is the question that's keeping me awake. Because whoever she is, she got into our vehicle without anyone noticing. She survived an IED blast that should have caused more damage. And now she's lying in our medical facility with the kind of scars that tell a story we can't read. He looked at the woman, then back at Tessa. I'm assigning you to 24-hour watch, rotating with Finch every 6 hours, but you're primary. If she wakes, if she says anything, if she makes any move, I want to know immediately. Understood, sir. And Grayson, I need you to be honest with me. Can you handle this? If she's hostile, if she becomes a threat, can you do what's necessary? Tessa met his eyes. I'm a corpsman, sir. I save lives. I don't take them. That wasn't my question. Silence stretched between them. Tessa thought about her father, about the training, about skills she'd buried for 9 years, about promises made to a grieving mother. If she threatens this team, Tessa said slowly, I'll do what's necessary, but I'd prefer to keep her alive for questioning. Thorne's expression softened slightly. Fair enough. Get some food. Finch takes over at 2100. Be back by 0300. Yes, sir. Thorne left. Tessa remained for another few minutes. Then she stood, stretched. Her shoulder protested. The bruise was deeper than she'd admitted, but functional. That's all that mattered. And she walked to the door, paused, looked back at the woman on the table, and for just a fraction of a second, Tessa could have sworn she saw the woman's lips curve. The smallest hint of a smile, there and gone so fast it might have been imagination. Might have been. Tessa left the room, The door locked behind her with a solid click. Two armed guards stood outside. Security had been tripled. No one was taking chances. She walked down the hallway, her mind turning over details. Scars, training, scrubbed records, inside knowledge of their route. This woman was a professional. That much was clear. The question was, professional what, and whose side was she on? Tessa pushed through the exterior door. The evening air hit her face. Cool, salty. The Pacific was less than a mile away. She could smell it. She headed toward the mess hall. She needed food, needed to think, needed to prepare for a long night. But as she walked, her hand brushed against her cargo pocket. Something was there that hadn't been before. She stopped, reached in, a small piece of paper, folded tight. Tessa looked around. The compound was busy, personnel moving between buildings, evening shift change, but no one watching her specifically. She unfolded the paper. 3 words, written in precise block letters. Trust no one. Tessa's blood went cold. She looked around again. Searched for whoever had planted this. But the compound was full of people. It could have been anyone. Could have been placed any time during the chaos of the attack. She refolded the paper, put it back in her pocket, kept walking. But her mind was racing now. Someone had gotten close enough to plant a message without her noticing. Someone wanted her to know something, to suspect something, or someone wanted to sow paranoia, make her doubt everyone around her, classic psychological warfare. Tessa entered the mess hall, got food she wouldn't taste, sat alone, ate mechanically. Her thoughts kept returning to the woman, to those perfect vitals, that controlled breathing, those scars that told stories of violence and survival. And to the question that wouldn't leave her alone, what was about to happen, because that's what this felt like. The calm before something bigger. The setup before the reveal. Tessa had been in enough situations to recognize the pattern, the attack, the mystery, the infiltration. All of it pointed towards something planned, something coordinated, and she was sitting at the center of it. A corpsman, not an operator, not trained for this kind of threat. But her father's voice echoed in her memory. You're never just one thing, Tess. You're a medic who can fight, a fighter who can heal. Don't ever forget both hands matter. Both hands. Tessa looked at her own hands, steady, scarred from years of medical work, but underneath muscle memory from thousands of rounds. Trigger discipline, breath control, range estimation, all still there, all waiting. She finished her food, disposed of her tray, checked her watch. 19:30 hours. 90 minutes until she could return to the medical facility. She headed to her barracks, showered, changed into fresh utilities. The movement of dressing pulled at her shoulder. She winced, applied an ice pack for 20 minutes, then a heat wrap. Old military remedy, ice the inflammation, heat the muscles. At 2100, she walked back to the medical facility. Finch was waiting outside. She wake up, Tessa asked. Not once. Vitals are perfect. Too perfect, if you ask me. Finch handed her a tablet. Hourly documentation. Everything's normal, which is exactly what's bothering me. Tessa nodded, took the tablet. Get some rest. You too, eventually. He left. Tessa entered the room. The guards outside snapped to attention. She acknowledged them, closed the door. Inside, nothing had changed. The woman lay exactly as before. Same position, same peaceful expression, same controlled breathing. Tessa settled into the chair, pulled out the tablet. Reviewed Finch's notes. Hourly vital checks. All normal. No signs of consciousness. No movement beyond basic autonomic functions. She put the tablet aside, leaned back. The next 6 hours stretched ahead. The facility was quiet, just the hum of ventilation, the soft beep of monitors, the distant sound of footsteps in other parts of the building. Tessa let her mind wander, back to her father, to the range sessions, the tactical training, the long conversations about what it meant to serve. Being strong isn't about how much you can lift, he'd said once. It's about what you can carry. And sometimes, Tess, what you carry is the weight of knowing you could hurt someone but choosing not to. That's real strength. She'd been 15, didn't fully understand then, but she understood now. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. Tessa's eyes grew heavy. She shook her head, stood, paced the room, checked the monitors again. All normal. She was turning back to her chair when she heard it. Soft, almost imperceptible. A voice, female, barely above a whisper. You're wondering who I am? Tessa froze, her eyes shot to the examination table. The woman's eyes were open, dark, intelligent, fixed directly on Tessa, and she was smiling. "Hello, Corman Grayson," the woman said. Her voice carried an accent. Eastern European, Russian maybe. "We need to talk, because everything you think you know about today is wrong." Tessa's hand went to her belt again. Still no weapon. She was alone, with a woman who had just revealed she knew Tessa's name, knew she'd been waiting, knew everything. "Who are you?" Tessa asked, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. The woman sat up slowly, the IV line still in her arm, the splint still on her fracture, but she moved with grace, with control. "My name," she said, "is Kira Volkov, and I'm here to save your life, all of your lives, because this base has been compromised. There are 5 people inside your perimeter who want you dead, and tomorrow night they're going to make their move." She fixed Tessa with those dark eyes. "The question is, will you believe me in time, or will you dismiss me as just another enemy? Because Corman Grayson, I know something about you too. I know what you're hiding. I know whose daughter you are, and I know why you're really here." Tessa's blood turned to ice. The woman who called herself Kira smiled wider. "So, shall we discuss how to keep your team alive? Or shall we waste time with denials and threats?" The monitors beeped, the ventilation hummed, and in that small room 2 women faced each other across a divide of trust and suspicion. Everything was about to change. And Tessa Grayson, the corpsman who'd promised never to fight, was about to be pulled into a war she couldn't avoid. The night had only just begun. The words hung in the air between them. Kira Volkov sat on the examination table, IV still attached, splinted arm resting on her lap, but her posture was no longer that of a patient. It was the posture of a predator who had decided it was time to stop pretending. Tessa's mind raced through options. The guards were outside. She could call them. Should call them. This woman had just admitted to orchestrating the IED attack, to infiltration, to manipulation. But she'd also said she was here to save lives. "How do you know my name?" Tessa asked. "Keep her talking. Buy time to think." "Shadow Protocol has files on every person at this facility," Kira replied. "Yours was particularly interesting. Petty Officer 2nd Class Tessa Grayson, 27 years old, Navy corpsman, 2 years at Coronado, exemplary medical record, 53 lives saved in field operations, 0 disciplinary actions." She paused, smiled slightly. "Daughter of Master Sergeant Daniel Grayson, Marine Force Reconnaissance, deceased 9 years ago. You were trained by one of the best tactical operators the Corps ever produced, capable of shooting expert marksman scores by age 16, and yet you chose to heal instead of fight. Why?" Tessa's jaw tightened. "That's none of your concern. On the contrary, it's exactly my concern, because in the next 48 hours, you're going to have to make a choice between keeping a promise and keeping people alive, and I need to know which one you'll choose." "You're not making any sense." Kira reached slowly into the hospital gown. Tessa tensed, but what Kira withdrew wasn't a weapon. It was a small electronic device. Thin, about the size of a credit card. She held it up. "This has been recording everything since the moment you found me. Every conversation in this room. Every word spoken in the hallway outside. Would you like to hear what was said 6 hours ago, when Commander Thorne and Master Chief Lockhart discussed increasing security protocols?" Tessa didn't move. Kira tapped the device. A voice emerged. Thorne's voice. Clear, unmistakable. "Lockhart, I want Alpha protocols in place by 1800. No one enters or leaves the compound without authorization. And I want surveillance on that woman every second." Then Lockhart's voice. "Understood, Commander. I'll personally oversee the security upgrade." The recording stopped. Kira looked at Tessa. "Now listen to this, recorded at 1943 hours, 47 minutes ago." She tapped the device again, this time a different voice. Male, unfamiliar, speaking in rapid clip tones. "Red Veil confirms. Target is inside medical facility. Shadow Protocol operative identified. Timeline accelerated. Phase 2 initiates tomorrow, 2300 hours." A second voice responded, also male. "Confirmed. All assets in position. Lockhart will provide final authorization." The recording ended. Tessa felt the floor shift beneath her. Lockhart, Master Chief Dane Lockhart, 52 years old, 28 years of service, the most trusted security officer on base. "That's fake," Tessa said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Kira's eyes were hard now. "Then explain how I knew your exact patrol route this morning. Explain how an IED was placed in a training area that was swept 3 times before your departure. Explain how I appeared in your vehicle without anyone noticing." You could be lying about all of it, playing both sides. I could be. Kira stood slowly, gracefully. Her injured arm moved without hesitation. The fracture had been real, but not as severe as she'd made it appear. But you don't think I am, because you saw the scars, you noted the inconsistencies. You're smart enough to know that a simple infiltrator wouldn't injure herself to this extent, wouldn't risk being discovered before completing her mission. She took a step closer. Tessa held her ground. I'm here, Kira continued, because Shadow Protocol has been tracking a network called Red Veil for 8 months. They recruit from within military and intelligence services. They find people with access, with trust, with vulnerabilities. They exploit those vulnerabilities until the person is compromised beyond recovery. Why should I believe any of this? Because in approximately 90 seconds, the lights in this facility are going to fail. Emergency backup will take 30 seconds to engage. And during those 30 seconds, you're going to see exactly who I am. Tessa's hand moved toward the emergency call button on the wall. I wouldn't, Kira said quietly. Because if you call those guards right now, if you alert anyone to this conversation, the fifth person, the one inside your command structure will know we're on to them. And they'll accelerate their timeline. People will die tonight instead of tomorrow. Then what do you suggest? I suggest you trust your instincts. The same instincts that told you something was wrong when you first examined me. The same instincts your father spent years training. Before Tessa could respond, the lights went out. Complete darkness. The monitors flatlined to black. The ventilation stopped. Even the ambient hum of the building died. 30 seconds. Kira had said 30 seconds. Tessa's training kicked in. She stayed still, controlled her breathing, listened. She heard movement, soft, precise. Kira was moving through the dark like she could see, like she'd planned for this exact scenario. Then a whisper, right next to Tessa's ear, close enough to feel a breath. 5 people want you dead. Corporal Bennett Hayes, your communications specialist. He's been feeding encrypted messages to external cells for 14 months. Technician Ross Mitchell and Technician Quinn Anderson, your maintenance crew. They've been mapping your weapons storage and vulnerable infrastructure for 11 months. Supply Officer Sloan Carter, who controls inventory and knows every shipment schedule. She's been with them for 8 months. And the fifth, the one who coordinates them all, the one with enough authority to change patrol routes, override security, and make people disappear. The lights came back on. Emergency lighting first, dim red, then the main power. Fluorescent brightness flooding the room. Kira stood exactly where she'd been before. On the examination table, IV still attached, splint still in place, as if she'd never moved. But on the medical tray beside Tessa, arranged in a perfect line, were 4 items that hadn't been there before. A scalpel, a syringe, a vial of sedative, and a small knife that had been hidden somewhere on Kira's person. If I wanted you dead, Kira said, you'd be dead. If I wanted to escape, I'd be gone. Instead, I'm asking for your help, because you're the only person in this facility who I know for certain isn't compromised. How do you know that? Because if you were, you would have killed me already, or called for backup, or done anything except stand there trying to decide if I'm telling the truth. Tessa looked at the weapons on the tray, then back at Kira. You have 1 minute to convince me, she said. Then I'm calling Commander Thorne. Good, call him, but not from here. And bring me with you, because he needs to hear this directly, and you need protection, starting now. Tessa made her decision. She moved to the door, opened it. The guards snapped to attention. I need to speak with Commander Thorne immediately, she said. Medical emergency requiring command authorization. The senior guard nodded, keyed his radio. Commander Thorne Corman Grayson requests immediate audience. Medical priority. A pause. Then Thorne's voice tired but alert. Send her to the operations center. 5 minutes. Tessa turned back to Kira. You're coming with me. But if you make any move, I don't like those guards will put you down before you take 2 steps. Understood. They moved through the facility, 2 guards flanking them. Kira walked easily despite her supposed injuries. She was done pretending. The operations center was 3 buildings away. A concrete bunker built during the Cold War, upgraded with modern electronics but maintaining the same fortress mentality. Inside, Commander Thorne waited. So did Master Chief Lockhart. And the rest of the team? Ashford, Brennan, Drake, Finch, all summoned from various duties. They looked at Kira with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Thorne spoke first. Corman Grayson, what's the emergency? Tessa took a breath. This was the moment. Once she said the words, there was no taking them back. Sir, This woman has information about the attack today, information that suggests we've been compromised. The room went silent, every eye fixed on Kira. Lockhart stepped forward. His face was neutral, but his hand rested on his sidearm. Commander, with respect, this woman is an unknown. We have no verification of her identity or intentions. Whatever she's told Corman Grayson could be disinformation. Kira smiled, not warmly. Master Chief Lockhart, 28 years of service, decorated in 3 combat deployments, trusted by everyone in this room, and compromised for the last 3 years. Lockhart's face went dark. That's absurd. Commander, this is exactly the kind of manipulation our enemies use. Sow distrust, divide us from within. Then explain this, Kira said. She held up the recording device. Explain how I knew your patrol route. Explain how an IED was placed in a swept area. Explain how I have recordings of encrypted communications between your base and Red Veil cells. She tapped the device. The recording played. The voices discussing Phase 2, mentioning Lockhart by name. The room went cold. Thorne's expression didn't change, but his eyes shifted, looking at Lockhart differently, calculating. That could be faked, Lockhart said, but there was an edge to his voice now. Defensive. Could be, Thorne agreed, but it warrants investigation. Lockhart, you're relieved of duty pending security review. Surrender your weapon and access cards. Commander, this is a mistake. You're letting her manipulate you. It's a precaution. If you're clean, you'll be cleared within hours. If not, we need to know now. Lockhart's hand moved toward his weapon, not to surrender it, to draw it. But Ashford was faster. The sniper's hand was already on his sidearm. Don't, he said quietly. Sir, please don't make this worse. For a long moment, Lockhart stood frozen, his hand on his weapon, eyes moving from face to face, seeing doubt, seeing suspicion. Then he laughed, bitter, harsh. You fools, you think this is about me. This is so much bigger than one man. He drew his weapon, but not to shoot. He placed it on the table, along with his access cards, his radio. I'm not the threat, he said. I'm the distraction. While you waste time investigating me, the real attack is already in motion. Kira shook her head. No, we know about Bennett Hayes, Ross Mitchell, Quinn Anderson, Sloan Carter. All of them. We know the timeline. 2,300 hours tomorrow. Lockhart smiled. Tomorrow, you think we give you that much time? We knew you were Shadow Protocol the moment you entered that vehicle. We knew you'd manipulate the corpsmen. We knew you'd try to turn us against each other. He looked directly at Kira. Phase 2 doesn't start tomorrow. It started an hour ago. There are explosive devices already placed throughout this facility, set to detonate at midnight, 43 minutes from now. And the only person who knows where they all are is me. The room erupted. Thorne shouted orders. Brennan, the EOD specialist, demanded locations. Guards moved to secure Lockhart, but Kira's voice cut through the chaos. He's lying. Everyone stopped, looked at her. Partial lying, she clarified. There are devices, but not set for midnight. That's misdirection. He wants you to panic, to evacuate, to expose yourselves in the open where the external assault team can engage. She moved closer to Lockhart, studying him. The real question is, why reveal yourself now? You could have maintained cover, could have fed us false information, but instead you compromised your entire operation. Wow, Lockhart's smile faded, and in that moment Tessa saw it, the truth behind the lies. Because you're not the primary target, she said quietly. The attack isn't about this facility. It's about who we call for help. Kira nodded slowly. You're bait. This entire base is bait. You want us to call for backup. Special operations teams. High-value targets concentrated in one place for a security emergency. Thorne's face went pale. How many teams are we talking about? Every SEAL team within helicopter range, Kira replied. Every rapid response unit. Every counterterrorism specialist. All converging on Coronado, where Red Veil has had 18 months to prepare an ambush. The magnitude of it settled over them, not just an attack on one base. A coordinated strike designed to eliminate dozens of elite operators in a single night. Brennan spoke up. If that's true, we need to warn Naval Special Warfare Command. Get the word out before anyone deploys. Agreed, Thorne said. He moved toward the communications console. Sir, wait. Tessa's voice stopped him. If Lockhart is compromised, if he's been feeding them information for 3 years, then they know our communication protocols. They'll be monitoring. The moment we send that warning, they'll know we're aware. They'll adapt. Thorne paused, hand hovering over the console. Then what do you suggest? Tessa looked at Kira. the woman who had orchestrated all of this, who had allowed herself to be injured, who had played the role of victim to get inside their perimeter. We let them think their plan is working, Tessa said. We evacuate. We call for backup, but we do it on our terms. Feed them false information about when and where the response teams will arrive, and we prepare our own ambush. Kira's eyes showed approval. I never approval. Operation Mousetrap. Turn the trap around. Thorne considered this, then nodded. We'll need to identify all of Lockhart's assets, Bennett, Hayes, and the others. Neutralize them simultaneously so no one can warn the external cells. I can help with that, Kira said. I've been tracking their communication patterns for months. I know when they report in, how they signal each other. Lockhart laughed again. You're all dead. You just don't know it yet. Hayes is already broadcasting your every move. Mitchell and Anderson have access to your power grid. Carter controls your ammunition stores. And there's still one more you haven't identified. The fifth asset, the one with the highest clearance. He looked around the room. One of you, right here, right now. The paranoia was instant, eyes shifting, hands moving toward her weapons, trust evaporating. He's manipulating you again, Kira said sharply. Classic interrogation technique. Plant doubt, make you suspect each other. Don't give him the satisfaction. But the seed was planted. Tessa could see it in their faces. Thorne looked at his team members differently. Ashford's hand stayed near his weapon. Even Finch, the other corpsman, seemed to edge away from the group. Tessa's mind worked through the problem. 5 assets. They knew 4. Hayes, Mitchell, Anderson, Carter. But the fifth, the one with high clearance, it couldn't be Thorne. He was the base commander. If he were compromised, none of this would be necessary. It couldn't be Ashford, Brennan, or Drake. They were line operators, limited access. That left support personnel, intelligence, logistics, administration, or it left someone not in this room at all. We need to move him on this now, Thorne decided. Lockhart, you're confined to the brig under maximum security. No communications, no visitors. Grayson, I want you and Kira to compile everything she knows about Red Veil's operation. Ashford, you and Drake conduct surveillance on Hayes, Mitchell, and Anderson. Brennan, sweep this facility for explosive devices. Finch, monitor all external communications. Orders given, purpose restored. The team moved to execute. But as they dispersed, Tessa found herself walking next to Kira through the compound, back toward the medical facility where they'd started. You knew he'd reveal himself, Tessa said. That's why you pushed, why you played the recording. I knew he had a choice, maintain cover or try to sow chaos. He chose chaos, which tells us something important. That he's desperate, that the attack is closer than we thought. If he's willing to burn his cover, it's because the timeline has been moved up. We don't have until tomorrow night. We have hours, maybe less. They entered the medical facility, Tessa's sanctuary, the place where she saved lives. Now it felt different, compromised, dangerous. Kira sat on the examination table again, winced slightly. The injuries were real after all. The performance had taken its toll. Tell me about your father, she said. Tessa looked at her. Why? Because I need to know if you can do what's coming. The medical part you're expert at. But the other part, the fighting, the killing, can you do that if necessary? Tessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. My father taught me to shoot when I was 10. By 16, I could hit moving targets at 800 meters. He wanted me to join special operations, follow in his footsteps, but he died when I was 18. Heart attack, no warning, just gone. She paused, the memory still raw after 9 years. My mother was destroyed. She made me promise. No combat, no special operations. Use my skills to heal, not to hurt. So I became a corpsman, and I've kept that promise for 9 years. 53 people alive because of it. But you can still shoot. Muscle memory doesn't forget. And if you have to choose between keeping your promise and saving your team, Tessa met Kira's eyes. I made a promise to my mother, but I also took an oath when I joined the Navy, to protect and defend. If it comes down to it, if there's no other option, I'll do what's necessary. But I'll try every other option first. Kira nodded. Fair enough. Though I suspect before this is over, you'll find that healing and fighting aren't as separate as you've been telling yourself. What do you mean? Your father didn't teach you to shoot so you could hurt people. He taught you so you could protect them. Sometimes protection requires force. Sometimes healing requires eliminating the threat. You can do both, with both hands. Both hands, the phrase her father had used. How did Kira know that? But before Tessa could ask, an alarm sounded throughout the facility. High-pitched, urgent, the security breach alarm. Thorne's voice came over the PA system. All personnel intruder alert. Multiple contacts on perimeter. This is not a drill. Secure all positions. Prepare for potential breach. Tessa and Kira exchanged glances. They moved Obwi's timeline, Serio, Kira said. They know we're on to them. How to know, but Lockhart, he must have had a dead man switch. A signal that triggers if he's compromised. The moment Thorne can find him, Red Veil knew. The alarm continued. Outside, Tessa could hear shouting, running footsteps, the base mobilizing for threat response. Kira stood, all pretense of injury gone now. It's starting. The question is, are you ready? Tessa thought about her promise, about her father, about the 53 people she'd saved, and the choice she'd never wanted to face. Then she thought about Ashford, Brennan, Drake, Finch, her team, her responsibility. She walked to the medical locker, opened it. Inside were supplies, bandages, medications, instruments, and at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, was something she'd hidden 2 years ago. Something she'd told herself she'd never need. Her father's M1911 pistol. The one the Corps had presented to her mother at his funeral. The one her mother had given to Tessa with tears in her eyes and a plea to never use. Tessa picked it up, the weight familiar, comforting, terrifying. She checked the magazine, loaded. She chambered around. The slide racked with a sound that seemed too loud in the small room. I'm ready, she said. Kira smiled. Good, because in the next hour you're going to need both hands, to heal and to fight. And before the night is over, you're going to discover something your father already knew. What's that? That the strongest warriors aren't the ones who choose between violence and mercy. They're the ones who know when each is required and who have the courage to do both. Outside, the first gunshots echoed across the compound. The attack had begun, and Tessa Grayson, the corpsman who had promised never to fight, was about to break that promise in ways she never imagined. The night was far from over, and the hardest test was still to come. The gunfire started exactly when he'd promised it would. The eastern perimeter erupted first, short controlled bursts, professional fire discipline, not the wild spraying of amateurs. These were trained operators executing a coordinated assault. Tessa ran toward the sound with Kira beside her. The M1911 in her hand felt like holding two conflicting truths. Her father's legacy, her mother's worst fear. 9 years of promises breaking with every step. They cleared the medical facility into controlled chaos. Personnel sprinting to defensive positions. Floodlights sweeping the perimeter fence like fingers searching for threats. The distinctive crack of M4 rifles answered by heavier weapons from beyond the wire. Commander Thorne's voice cut through the radio chatter. All personnel, this is not a drill. Multiple contacts, all perimeters. Lockhart has escaped custody. Repeat, Master Chief Lockhart is hostile and leading the assault. Tessa's blood went cold. Escaped. How Kira's voice was grim beside her. Hayes had to be. He had communications access. Probably created a false evacuation order, opened the cell during confusion. They planned this, Tessa said. His arrest was the signal. Always was. We forced his hand early, but he adapted. That's what makes them dangerous. Bullets kicked up concrete dust to their left. Someone had acquired their position. Tessa and Kira dove for cover behind a transport vehicle. The shots came from elevated position, precise, hunting them specifically. Tactical Operations Center, Kira said. 20 yards. On my mark. They moved together. Kira's injuries were completely forgotten now. She moved like mercury. Fluid. Lethal. Whatever pain she felt was buried under years of operational conditioning. They reached the bunker. Thorne was inside coordinating defensive sectors. Ashford checked his rifle with methodical precision. Brennan loaded breaching charges. Drake verified ammunition counts. Finch monitored communications. The team. Her team. All of them about to face an enemy that had spent 18 months preparing for this exact moment. Grayson, Thorne barked. Casualties incoming. Set up triage west bunker. Harden structure, clear, retreat lines if we need to fall back. Tessa wanted to argue, wanted to stay with the team, fight alongside them. But Thorne was right. She was a corpsman first. That hadn't changed just because she'd picked up her father's pistol. Understood, sir. She moved to the west bunker with Kira following. Inside, she began the familiar ritual. Medical supplies from emergency cache, bandages, hemostatic agents, tourniquets, IV fluids, chest seals. The tools that had defined her for 9 years. Kira appeared carrying a Barrett M8 2A1 sniper rifle, 50 caliber, 30 pounds of precision engineering. She set it against the wall with a case of match-grade ammunition. I'm not a sniper, Tessa said. Your father was Marine Force Recon. He taught you from age 10. By 16, you were hitting targets at 800 meters. Kira's eyes were steady, knowing. The training doesn't leave. It waits. Tonight, it stops waiting. Before Tessa could respond, Tyler Finch's voice screamed over the radio. Panicked. Raw. Man down. Drake is hit. Femoral artery. I need help now. Tessa grabbed her trauma kit and ran. Kira followed. They found Finch 50 yards from the bunker behind a concrete barrier. Drake was on the ground, blood pumping from his inner thigh in rhythmic spurts. Arterial. High volume. Critical. Tessa dropped beside him. Her hands moved before conscious thought, training overriding everything else. She ripped his pant leg open, found the wound, high on the inner thigh, femoral artery severed clean. Cat tourniquet, she snapped. Finch fumbled it from his kit, handed it over with shaking hands. Tessa positioned the tourniquet 2 inches above the wound, as high anatomically as possible. She tightened the windlass, 1 full turn, 2, 3, 4. Drake screamed, but the bleeding slowed, then stopped. Femoral artery completely severed, Tessa reported, her voice clinical, detached, the way corpsmen learn to function in crisis. Class 4 hemorrhagic shock will develop within minutes without surgical intervention. He needs an OR within the hour or he loses the leg, maybe the life. Can't evac, Finch said. His face was pale. They've got anti-air. The helipads are kill zones. More gunfire. Closer. Different angle. Tessa looked up and saw muzzle flashes from the water tower. 300 yards. Someone had breached the inner perimeter, had taken elevated position, was systematically targeting their defensive positions with precision fire. Callum Ashford's voice on the radio, steady, professional. I have eyes on tower shooter, 900 meters, moving to engage. Then a different sound, the deep bark of a .50 caliber rifle from outside the wire, and Ashford's voice changing, pain replacing composure. I'm hit, right hand destroyed, cannot operate weapon. The words hit Tessa like physical impact. Their sniper was down, the enemy sniper was still active, still hunting, and without counter-sniper capability, they'd be picked apart systematically. Thorne's voice, desperate in a way she'd never heard. Anyone qualified for long-range engagement, we need counter-sniper immediately. They're eliminating our defensive positions one by one. Tessa looked at Drake. Stable for now, the tourniquet holding. She looked at Finch. Monitor him. If bleeding restarts, direct pressure and call me. If he goes into shock, start an IV wide open. Where are you going? But Tessa was already running, back to the west bunker, to the Barrett rifle waiting there like a question she'd avoided for 9 years. She burst through the entrance. Kira had anticipated her. The rifle was set up on its bipod, scope already zeroed, ammunition laid out in precise rows. 700 meters to the water tower, Kira said without preamble. Wind from the east 12 miles per hour. Compensate point 7 mils left. First shot is for ranging. Second shot is for keeps. I haven't fired a weapon in 9 years. Your body remembers what your mind tried to forget. Your father made sure of that. Tessa dropped behind the rifle. The position felt natural despite the years. Her body settling into stance her father had drilled 10,000 times. Cheek weld, eye relief, breathing control, all of it automatic. She found the target through the scope. Movement in the tower, a figure repositioning, preparing another shot. Someone else was about to die if she didn't act. 700 meters. Achievable range, but not easy, especially with hands that suddenly wanted to shake. She thought about her promise. To her mother, to herself. Never to take a life, never to become the thing her father had been. But she thought about Drake bleeding out, Ashford with his hand destroyed. Every person in this compound who would die if she let fear control her. Her father's voice, clear as if he stood beside her. Being strong isn't about how much you can lift, Tess. It's about what you can carry. Sometimes you carry the weight of mercy. Sometimes you carry the weight of necessary violence. Both require strength. Both require steady hands. Steady hands, the phrase he'd used 1,000 times. Tessa controlled her breathing. 4-count inhale, 7-count hold, 8-count exhale. The technique carved into neural pathways by endless repetition. Her heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to scope picture. To target, to the space between intention and action. She adjusted for wind, .7 mils, elevated for distance. Calculated the Coriolis effect at this range. All of it automatic. Burned into muscle memory by her father's patient instruction. Her finger found the trigger. Not pulling, squeezing. Gradual increase in pressure until the break point. She fired. The Barrett roared. Recoil hammered her shoulder. 30 pounds of rifle trying to break bone, but her body absorbed it, rolled with it, exactly as trained. Through the scope, she watched the impact, low, 6 inches below target. The figure in the tower flinched, relocated, disappeared from view. She'd missed. Breathe, Kira said, calm, steady. You rush the trigger squeeze. You know better. Reset. Find him again. Tessa worked the bolt. The spent casing ejected with a metallic ring. She chambered another round. 50 caliber match grade. Each one cost more than most people spent on dinner. Each one could end a life from over a mile away. She found the target again. He'd moved, was setting up for another shot at someone in the compound, preparing to kill while she hesitated. This time, Tessa took the extra second, controlled the trigger, squeezed perfectly, felt the break point, the moment of commitment. She fired. The figure jerked, fell backward, disappeared. 700 meters. Center mass, target neutralized. The compound erupted in relieved chatter over the radio. Sniper down, tower threat eliminated. Who made that shot? Tessa didn't answer. She was staring through the scope at empty space where a human being had been standing moments ago. Was standing no longer, because of her, because of the decision made and executed in less than 3 seconds. She'd killed someone. Kira's hand touched her shoulder. You stop someone from killing. There's a difference. Hold on to that difference when the nightmares come. Before Tessa could process the words, Wyatt Brennan's voice screamed over the radio, raw terror bleeding through. Multiple hostiles breaching Southgate. I'm taking fire, chest hit. Can't breathe. Tessa was moving before the transmission ended. Grabbed her trauma kit, left the Barrett, sprinted toward Brennan's last position. 200 yards through open ground. Bullets snapped past close enough to hear the supersonic crack, close enough to feel the pressure wave. She found Brennan behind a disabled vehicle. His body armor had stopped the round, but the kinetic impact had broken ribs. One had punctured his lung, tension pneumothorax, air building in the chest cavity, compressing the lung, compressing the heart. Without immediate intervention, he'd suffocate within minutes. Can't breathe. His lips were turning blue. Cyanosis, oxygen starvation. Tessa ripped his shirt open, found the injury, right side, 4th intercostal space. She pulled a 14-gauge needle from her kit, 3 inches long, designed specifically for this. This will hurt, she said. She felt for anatomical landmarks, found the intercostal space, just above the rib to avoid the neurovascular bundle beneath. She pushed the needle through skin, through intercostal muscle, through pleura, felt the resistance, then the give as it entered the chest cavity. Air hissed out under pressure. The tension released. Brennan's color improved immediately. Needle decompression, successful, she reported, but he needs a chest tube, needs an OR. I can't do more here. More gunfire. Different direction. Further out. 900 meters according to her practiced eye. She saw the muzzle flash, saw dust kick up near Ashford's position where he was trying to return fire one-handed. They had another sniper. Further back. Better concealed, better positioned, and Ashford was exposed. Vulnerable. The next shot would kill him. Tessa looked at Brennan. Can you hold this position? Do I have a choice? She ran back to the bunker. To the Barrett. Kira had repositioned it, had the scope on the distant threat. 900 meters, Kira said. Wind shifted, southeast at 15 miles per hour now. Complex compensation. And he's good, very good. Former military, possibly Tier 1. Tessa dropped behind the rifle, found the target, barely visible. Just a suggestion of shape, shadow that occasionally shifted. 900 meters. Further than her father had pushed her in training, further than she'd ever attempted. But Ashford was going to die if she didn't make this shot. She calculated. Wind drift, bullet drop, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, all the variables that transform shooting from skill to science. But as she prepared to fire, her hands started trembling. Adrenaline catching up. Reality of what she'd done, what she was doing. The weight of it crushing down. I can't, she whispered. My hands won't steady. Then don't fight the shake, Kira said. Work with it. Your father taught you to shoot between heartbeats, between breaths. Find the still point in the motion. Tessa closed her eyes, felt her pulse, counted beats. There, between contractions, a fraction of a second where even trembling hands went still, where the body paused between one moment and the next. She opened her eyes, acquired target, waited for the pause, fired. The distant figure dropped, 900 meters through wind and doubt and trembling hands. Target eliminated. Ashford's voice, shaky but alive. I don't know who's on that, Barrett, but you just saved my life. Thank you. Tessa stayed behind the rifle, scanning, looking for the next threat, the next decision, the next moment when both hands would matter. And then she saw him. Master Chief Dane Lockhart, leading the main assault force through the breached South Gate. 60 armed operatives moving in coordinated fire teams. Professional, disciplined. And in the center, Lockhart directing them with hand signals, orchestrating the attack like a conductor leading an orchestra of violence. Thorne's voice carried exhaustion and defeat. All personnel fall back to secondary defensive positions. We're outnumbered 3-1. We need to consolidate. The team began withdrawing, covering each other, moving by bounds, standard tactics. But Drake couldn't move, still behind his barrier where Tessa had treated him, and Finch was with him, both exposed, both about to be overrun. Lockhart saw them, started directing fire their way, trying to eliminate the easy targets before pressing deeper. Drake and Finch are pinned, Landon Drake's voice over radio. Wait, Drake was the one pinned. This was someone else. They're going to get overrun. Tessa looked through the scope. 1,100 meters to Drake's position. 1,200 to where Lockhart was directing the assault. Maximum effective range for the Barrett. And Lockhart was moving, commanding, gesturing. A dynamic target at extreme range. She could run to them, cross open ground, treat Drake properly, get them both to safety. That was her job. That was what Corman did. Corman didn't take 1,000-meter shots at moving targets. But if she left this rifle, Lockhart would coordinate his forces to systematic slaughter. The tactical mathematics were clear. One shot could end this, could save 40 lives, could stop the assault before it became a massacre. One shot could also miss, could waste seconds, could get her killed before she reached Drake. Healing or fighting, medicine or violence. The false choice her father had tried to teach her to see through. Then she understood. It wasn't either or. It was sequence. Fight first, then heal. Both hands, both skills, both necessary. She lined up the shot, Lockhart in the scope, 1,180 meters according to the rangefinder. Moving left to right at approximately 2 miles per hour. Wind gusting to 18 miles per hour now. Variable. Unpredictable. The hardest shot she'd ever attempted. Moving target, extreme range. Combat stress. Everything that could make a shot impossible. She made the calculations, led the target 2 body widths, elevated for distance, adjusted for wind, adjusted for the adjustment because wind was gusting. Estimated Coriolis, estimated spin drift, estimated everything that couldn't be measured precisely, found the pause between heartbeats, the still point in chaos. Fired. Through the scope, she saw Lockhart stumble, grab his shoulder, go down. Not a kill shot. She'd aimed center mass but hit high right, but enough to take him out of the fight, enough to decapitate their command structure. With their leader down, the assault faltered. Red Veil operatives began pulling back, losing cohesion, becoming targets instead of coordinated threat. The base defenders pressed advantage, drove them back, eliminated them systematically. But Tessa didn't watch the victory. She was already running, toward Drake, toward Finch, back to being a corpsman, because the fighting part was done. Now came the healing. She reached them in 40 seconds. Drake was worse. Shock setting in despite the tourniquet. She started an IV, pushed fluids, administered pain medication, checked Finch. Uninjured physically, terrified mentally, shell-shocked. "Help me move him," she ordered. They lifted Drake together. Her shoulder screamed protest. The bruise from the morning's IED making itself known. But she carried him anyway. Because that's what corpsmen did. Drag people out alive. Behind them, gunfire was dying. The compound securing. The attack repelled. But at what cost? Tessa worked through the night, treating wounds, stabilizing patients, doing what she'd trained for. What she'd promised to do. The medical work never stopped, never hesitated. Her hands stayed steady through all of it. By 0300 hours, she'd treated 47 casualties, 47 people who would have died without her. And somewhere among the enemy casualties were 3 people who had died because of her. 3 lives taken to save 47. The mathematics should have been simple, but mathematics didn't account for the weight. for what you carried after. Dawn broke at 06:15. The compound was secure, the wounded stabilized, the dead counted and covered. Tessa sat on the steps of the medical bunker, exhausted, filthy, hands crusted with dried blood from dozens of patients. Wyatt Brennan approached, chest tube in place but walking, alive because she'd performed needle decompression in the middle of a firefight. "Grayson," he said, sat beside her. "I owe you my life." The doc said another 2 minutes and my heart would have stopped from the pressure. "Just doing my job." "No, you did more than that. You made 3 impossible shots. Then you saved a dozen lives with your medical skills. I've never seen anything like it." Before she could respond, Commander Thorne appeared. He looked like he'd aged a decade overnight, but alive. They were all alive. "Grayson, Admiral Steele is inbound from San Diego. ETA 20 minutes. He wants to see you specifically." "Why one?" "Because what you did last night, we're still processing it. 3 kills at 700, 900, and 1180 meters, all while managing multiple trauma patients. That's not corpsman work. That's not sniper work. That's something we don't have a name for yet." He paused, looked at her differently. "We recovered Lockhart. He's in critical condition but stable. And we recovered his laptop." Thorne held up the device. "Grayson, this changes everything. Lockhart wasn't just running operatives here. Red Veil has 89 people embedded across the country. FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, SOCOM, every major agency. This is the biggest counterintelligence discovery in American history." He looked at the screen, at names and positions scrolling past. "We're coordinating with FBI now. Simultaneous raids on all 89 positions before they can erase themselves, before they can disappear. You stopped an attack that would have killed dozens here, but this laptop just prevented something that could have destabilized the entire country." Tessa couldn't process it, couldn't understand the scope. She'd just been trying to save her team. "Lockhart's awake," Thorne continued. "He wants to talk. Says he'll only speak to you and Kira. Something about respecting warriors." "I'm not a warrior, I'm a corpsman." "You're both. That's what he understands. What we're all starting to understand." Admiral Garrett Steele arrived at 0800 hours, 62 years old, 4 stars, a man who'd commanded in every theater, who'd seen every kind of combat. He walked through the compound, inspected damage, spoke with wounded, reviewed after-action reports. Then he came to Tessa. "Petty Officer Second Class Tessa Grayson," he said. His voice carried the weight of authority earned through decades. "Stand." She stood, swaying slightly from exhaustion and shoulder pain. "Last night you engaged 3 enemy combatants at extended range under combat conditions. 700 meters, 900 meters, 1180 meters on a moving target. You achieved 4 hits from 4 shots after your initial ranging round. That's expert marksman level. Beyond expert. That's art." He stepped closer, eyes that had seen too much death looking at someone trying to process the same. "You also treated 47 casualties. 47, including emergency needle decompression, tourniquet application, and IV fluid resuscitation under fire. 0 preventable deaths. 0. He pulled something from his pocket. A patch. The Navy SEAL Trident. The badge that took years of suffering to earn. You didn't go through BUD/S. Didn't do the training. But you did something harder. You integrated 2 opposing identities. Healer and warrior. You proved they're not opposites. They're complementary, both hands serving the same mission." He held out the patch. "This doesn't make you a SEAL, but it makes you one of us. Someone who understands the mission is bigger than personal comfort, bigger than promises made in grief." Tessa took the patch, felt the weight beyond the physical, the meaning. Callum Ashford stepped forward, right hand bandaged but stable. "Grayson, I need to say something. I called you just a corpsman when you arrived. I was wrong. You're a warrior with both hands, and you saved my life. Thank you." Tyler Finch added, "I doubted you, thought you couldn't handle combat stress. I was wrong. You're 10 times the corpsman I'll ever be." Landon Drake wheeled closer in his wheelchair, alive, stable, legs saved. "You dragged me out alive when I'd already accepted death. That's what corpsmen do. But you did more. You eliminated threats so you could heal safely. That's integration." Admiral Steele smiled. "Your team has voted. You're one of them, whether you accept it or not." Tessa felt something break inside. Not breaking apart, breaking open. 9 years of denying half of who she was, of trying to be only the healer, of burying her father's legacy. Thank you, sir, she managed. You'll be recommended for Navy Commendation Medal with Valor Device, Steele said, and we're establishing a new program. Integrated Combat Medicine, teaching corpsmen to be both healers and protectors. You'll lead curriculum development, if you accept. Tessa thought about her mother, about the promise. I need to call my mother first, sir. Take all the time you need. That evening, Tessa made the call, the hardest conversation of her life, explaining, apologizing, waiting for judgment. Her mother listened, cried, was silent for a long moment. Then, your father always said you were stronger than both of us. He knew someday you'd need both hands. I didn't want to lose you like I lost him. You won't lose me, Mom. I promise. I know, baby. And your father would be so proud. He didn't teach you to shoot so you could hurt people. He taught you so you could protect them when healing wasn't enough. I understand that now. I'm terrified, but I'm proud too. That conversation was the beginning, not the end. 6 months later, Naval Medical Center San Diego hummed with morning activity. But the East Wing was different, new. The sign read Integrated Combat Medicine Program. Inside, Senior Chief Tessa Grayson stood before 24 Navy corpsmen, first class of a program that didn't exist 6 months ago. She'd been promoted 2 months prior. Youngest Senior Chief in Naval medical history, she'd gained back the weight she'd lost. The dark circles had faded. The shoulder injury had healed. She looked healthy, strong, at peace with who she was. Both parts integrated, both hands ready. Welcome to ICMP, she said. You're here because modern warfare requires integration, the ability to heal with one hand and defend with the other. Not because you want to fight, but because sometimes healing requires eliminating the threat first. She walked along the front of the room. You'll learn advanced trauma medicine, everything to keep someone alive in impossible conditions. And you'll learn marksmanship, tactical movement, threat assessment, everything to protect yourself and your patients when the enemy doesn't respect the Red Cross. A student raised his hand, young, uncertain. Senior Chief, isn't that against what corpsmen stand for? Good question, Tessa said. Yes, corpsmen are non-combatants under Geneva Conventions, but the enemy doesn't always honor conventions. And when your patient is bleeding out and the enemy is advancing, you have two choices. Run and let them die, or stand and give them a chance. She looked at each face. This program teaches you to stand, to understand that healing and fighting aren't opposites, they're complementary. Both serve one mission, bring them home alive. The phrase had spread, drag them out alive. By any means, it was on patches now, worn with pride. After class, Tessa returned to her office. Photos on the wall, her father in Marine dress blues, her team at Coronado, Admiral Steele presenting her medal, and one new photo, her mother, taken 2 months ago when she'd visited. Her mother had seen the rifle case, the medical kit, both sides of who Tessa was, and had accepted Oet, had even touched the Barrett with reverent hands. Your father would be so proud, she'd said. You became what he always knew you could be, both hands ready. A knock on her door. Captain Thorne entered. He'd been promoted, was overseeing all special warfare medical training now. Senior Chief, he said, Marine Corps wants their Force Recon Corpsmen in ICMP. That's 3 more classes per year. We can handle it. The curriculum works. The students excel. 127 graduates so far. 3 already deployed, all performing exceptionally. One made a 600-meter shot in Syria, saved his entire squad. Pride at that, not in the shot, in the life saved because both hands were ready. There's more, Thorne said. Someone wants to meet with you. Tonight, 1900 hours, beach north of base. Who? Kira Volkov. Tessa hadn't seen Kira since debriefing. The woman had disappeared back into shadows. That evening, Tessa walked to the beach. 1900 hours exactly. The Pacific rolled eternal beside her, creating and destroying in the same motion. Kira stood at the waterline, different hair, different clothes, different identity, but same eyes, still seeing too much. You came, Kira said. You saved 47 lives that night by warning us. I owed you a conversation. We saved them together, your shooting, my intelligence, both hands. What happens to you now? Shadow Protocol is restructuring. After Lockhart, after the 89 operatives, everything changed. I'm being reassigned, new identity, new mission, somewhere that needs someone who understands enemies wear friendly faces. Will I see you again? Maybe, if mission requires it. Or maybe we're just 2 people who crossed paths and changed each other's trajectory forever. Kira extended her hand. Tessa shook it, felt something pressed into her palm. Small device. Encrypted. If you ever need help outside official channels, Kira said, use this. She walked away, disappeared into evening crowd. Just another person on the beach, invisible. Tessa looked at the device, slipped it into her pocket. You never knew when you'd need a ghost. She returned to base, to her office. Her phone rang, private number. Senior Chief Grayson, Captain Reeves, SOCOM headquarters. We have a situation developing. Need a medical specialist with your particular integration of skills. Briefing tomorrow, 0800. Deployment possible within 72 hours. Interested? Tessa looked at her desk. Medical text one side, ballistics manual the other. Both hands, both skills, both necessary. Yes, sir, I'm interested. The sun set over the Pacific. Golden light on endless water. Beautiful and terrible in the same moment. Tessa smiled. Tomorrow would bring new missions. New opportunities to prove integration mattered more than specialization. But tonight she would rest, secure in knowledge that she'd finally become what her father always knew she could be. Not just a medic, not just a warrior, both. With both hands ready to heal when she could fight when she must. And always, always bring them home alive.